Number 7, find the value of the variables in each figure. Explain your reasoning. I see we have two parallel lines and a transversal. I also noticed that these two expressions contain an x and this expression contains a y. So we're going to be focused on the two expressions that contain an x because you want to have the same variables in your first equation so that you can actually solve for the variables. If you had an x and a y in the first equation, you wouldn't be able to solve it. We don't have enough information to be able to solve it. So we're going to be starting by looking at this angle and this angle. When I look at those two angles, we haven't memorized a relationship between those two angles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knowledge that I have to move this 9x plus 12, or I guess copy it in a different place. So I know that this angle and this angle, these two angles are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. So I know that this angle also equals 9x plus 12, and how that helps me is that now I see that these two angles that have expressions with an x inside of them have a relationship. These are interior angles because they're inside of the parallel lines, and they're also consecutive or same side. They're both on the bottom of the transversal. They're not on the top, they're both on the bottom. So if they're on the same side, they're supplementary. So we can write our first equation. 3x, we take that angle, and we add to it the 9x plus 12 angle, and together the sum when you add them will be 180 degrees. They're supplementary. From here we combine like terms. 3x and 9x make 12x. We carry down the adding 12, and then we carry down the 180 and the equal sign. From here we have a two-step equation. So I subtract 12 from each side, and I get 12x is equal to, well, let's see, I'm going to borrow from the 8 and make it a 7, make that a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8, 7 minus 1 is 6, I get 168. Then I divide each side by 12, and let's figure out what our quotient will be. 168 divided by 12. Well, 12 goes into 16 one time. I subtract, I get 4, bring down the 8. 12 goes into 48 4 times. And I'll get a remainder of 0 with nothing else to bring down, so the quotient is 14. So I found x equal 14. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 14 for x right here. So instead of 3 times x, I'm going to write 3 times 14. And then I'll multiply 14 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 gives me 4. So that angle is equal to 42 degrees. So now we're focused on these two angles, and these two angles together form a straight line. So they're called a straight angle or a linear pair because they add up to 180. So now I'm ready to write the next equation, so I'll grab another color, and I can take this expression 4y minus 10 and add to it the 42. We found it equals 42, and together those two angles add up to 180 degrees. Next, I combine like terms. So I copy down the 4y because nothing goes with the 4y. 42 minus 10 gives me 32. And I bring down the equal sign and the 180. From here, let's use a different color. I subtract 32 from each side. On the left side, I end up with 4y because this is a 0 pair, so I draw a 0 around it and cross it out. I borrow from the 8, make it a 7, add 10 to the 0. 10 minus 8, or 10 minus 2 is 8. 7 minus 3 is 4. And then the final step here is going to be to divide each side by 4. And to get my quotient, I'm going to use long division. So I take 148 and divide it by 14. Now 4 goes into 14 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12. And I get a remainder of 2, bring down the 8. 4 times 7 is 28. Remainder 0 here. So I get this quotient to be 37. And the only thing left that we can do now is check our work. I paused the video, I erased what we had, and I did some pre-work so this wouldn't take so much time to show our checking of the work. So the first thing I'm going to work on is this 4y minus 10. So you'll see I circled it in turquoise, I put it over here, and then we're going to plug in what we found for y. So we found y to be 37. So this is called substitution, when you replace a variable with a number. Then we're going to multiply that 37 by 4. 7 times 4 is 28, carry the 2. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 2 is 148. So we get 148 as our product, and then we subtract 10, and we're left with 138. So we have 138 here. Now I don't know if you remember, but we had already found this to be 42 degrees. So one way to check this part is to just add 138 plus 42, and those together are supposed to equal 180. So 8 and 2 makes 10, 3 and 4 is 7, plus 1 is 8, and that does equal 180. So that's our first check. Now I'm going to go ahead and change over to this color for the x equals 14, and we're replacing x with what we found x to equal. So we need to multiply that 14 by 9. 4 times 9 is 36, carry the 3, and then 1 times 9 is 9 plus 3 is 12, so we get our product to be 126. Then we need to add that 12. 6 and 2 makes 8, 2 and 1 makes 3, that gives us 138. So the way to check our work here is that if this was equal to 138, think about it, this angle and this angle, these are alternate exterior. And alternate exterior angles are congruent. So we got 138 over here and 138 over here, so I am convinced that we got the right values for y and for x.